Hi, seventh grade. Welcome back. Today we're still going to continue working on the bubonic plague, but the big emphasis today will be the effects of the plague, the effects on politics, the effect on religion, the effect on the economy, and the effect on people, obviously. So, there's three slides here. I think there's two slides. There's one, this one's the same one, two, and three. So I'm gonna go over all of this. So there's this idea of the plague doctor, but plague doctors didn't. This idea of the plague doctor with the beak looks like a bird didn't come into play until the 1600s. So this is incorrect. This idea is incorrect because the plague doctors didn't look like this until much later. As we discussed previously, the rat was the one that carried the disease from Asia into the Middle East. Remember Kaffa? And in Kaffa, there was a war where some Italian merchants were stuck there, and they left. They left and they entered Italy, and they were the ones. They were some of the first ones that brought the disease into Europe. Entered Italy first. So the rat obviously has a fleas, and the fleas are the ones that carry the disease. The rats most likely have the disease as well, but they will also die. Rats are, this guy's doing exercise with his mouse catcher or rat catcher, whatever that thing is. So again, the disease comes from China, northern China, Mongolia, by the Mongolian invaders. And Mongolian invaders don't invade Europe; they get to about here, and it's from there that it's carried to Europe through trade. It was also through trade, right? Um, Traders from Europe were able to go to China and the Middle East and get it. So that's this part. Most historians think that the plague killed between 30 and 60% of the European population between 1347 and 1351, and that's a big range, right? It can be from 25 to 50 million people. Okay, to put it into context, so this is a plague. In context, the coronavirus, COVID-19, has killed a little over a million people. That's worldwide. This is just Europe. This is worldwide. Um, COVID is obviously a different disease, but it's a global disease, right? The plague was primarily focused on Europe and Asia because the New World, North and South America hadn't been discovered yet. COVID is a um, world disease that has impacted all parts of the world except Antarctica, and it's for the same reasons, right? The same reasons that the plague was so damaging. COVID is also damaging. They didn't know what was causing it. We know what causes it, but we don't know how to cure it. Um, People in Europe did not know what caused it, and they didn't know exactly what was it. They thought it was, God did it, the Jews did it, certain people did it. For us, we know what causes it. We just don't have a cure for it, and we have some ideas on how to keep from getting infected, like social distancing. So if you look at the population of Europe in 1347, it was about 85 million people. So 80, half of 80 is 80, so about 85 million people. Um, and then it goes down all the way to about 60 million people. Okay. It doesn't recover, it doesn't get that population back until 1550. So it took a 200 years for the population of Europe to go back to where it was in 1347. So a tremendous loss of people. And with this tremendous loss of people, you have a whole shift. You have a complete change in society, right? Because the people that survive are able to demand more. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. So who will win? All of Europe or a sick rat? Someone said too soon. Someone said it's been 7.5 centuries, right? It's not too soon because, It's been hundreds of years. Okay, so I don't know if you remember, but this is the feudal system. The feudal system is where the king gives land to the people below him, and the people up below him give him their loyalty, right? At the base of the feudal system is this very important group of people um, who are the peasants, primarily the peasants and like the farmers, right? Peasants and farmers. Without this system, there is no feudal system. I'm sorry. Without these people, there is no feudal system. And a lot of these people died during the plague. So a lot of these people died, but a lot of these people died. And without these people, there is no feudal system because they are the ones that are in charge of growing the food, right? There's no food, there's no feudalism. So serfdom, the serfdoms are the peasants, the people that pretty much everyone that lives in the manor. So serfs began to disappear. They began to die off, right? As peasants had better opportunities to sell their labor. So there's two things happening here. One, a lot of them die, and the second part is let's look at this guy. So this is the manor, right? Let's imagine that this guy dies, this lady dies, and this lady dies, and that's it. And now this guy, he's like, well, you need to pay me more. You need to pay me more, or else I'm gonna leave. This is a free peasant, so he needs to get paid more, right? Because there's not a lot of workers left. So the guy says, no, no, no. The Lord says, I'm not gonna pay you more. So then this guy says, fine, I'll leave, and he takes off. Without this guy, there is no more feudalism. Let's eliminate this guy because he left. There is no more feudalism, right? The peasants that survive are able to demand more money. And if their needs are not met, then they leave. Let me highlight this bad boy here. Here it says high labor cost. Labor cost means work, right? People that you pay people to work. Cause landowners to look for more efficient and profitable ways to use their land and resources, such as increasing livestock production and payment of rent and money rather than labor. So what a lot of these people do, what a lot of these lords do is they get rid of, because there's not a lot of farmers, they say, well, fine, there's not a lot of farmers, so instead of farming, we're going to just have land to graze for animals to eat. We're not going to do farms, we're going to just have graze lands like this, right? This is not really a farm. This is um, you're paying some people to keep track of the animals and feed them, but you're not actually doing the farming because that takes a lot of labor, a lot of work. High labor costs also cause government to impose price controls on wages, but these efforts, so a lot of these people don't want to lose their power, right? So they're like, no, 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 we all need to agree. We're not going to pay anyone any more money. And what that does is it makes these people even more upset. High labor costs also cause governments to impose price controls on wages, but these efforts were often unsuccessful and sometimes met with rebellion. Still, the horrors of the Black Death were followed by the transformation. There's a mistake here, and I don't know how. When I copied and pasted, it just got messed up. So I'm gonna start here. Fewer people meant fewer peasants. So fewer people meant fewer peasants to work the fields of feudal lords. This gave more power to the workers who didn't die. Soon, workers in cities and rural areas started to demand higher wages, so they want more money. Wages in England. Wages means the what people are charging for their labor. Wages in England, for example, rose as between 40% in between 1340 and 1360. The result was a higher standard of living. People begin to live better lives, right? So the plague is obviously a very negative time period in history, but those people that survived it, they were able to benefit from it because their work was more valued because who's going to do the work? Okay. Okay, so we talked about this a lot about already, so we're not going to focus too much about it, but we are going to talk about the effects of feudalism, the effects of the plague, I'm sorry. The peasants of the farmers again gain more power and feudalism declined. There was a desperate need for workers because so many had died. The peasants that were still alive could demand more rights and money. Serfdom ended. Right? Again, the people that survive are able to demand more because, if you want them to work for you, you're going to have to treat them better. So foreigners and minorities, especially Jews, were falsely blamed for the plague and often persecuted. I was reading this article that Jews were forced to admit that they had done it. Jews were forced to admit that they had created the plague, but they didn't, right? Because a lot of Jews were also dying. There was also this article that I read about black cats, and a bunch of black cats were killed because they thought that it was like a sign of the devil. The entire social order broke down. People lost faith. This is a really big one. People lose faith in their religion. Why? One, because the church can't help them. All those prayers are not working because people think that God did it, so they're trying to pray. Another reason why so they lose faith in the church because the church can't help them. Another reason why the church lost power was because so many priests died and people were not able to have a connection with God anymore or to their church. So we focus on this already, so we're not going to focus on this anymore. So the church lost credibility. Look, the church couldn't save people from the plague, and priests charged for last rites. So whenever you're going to die, actually, I'm going to skip that for now. So in Europe, the population death was up to 66%. Jews were blamed and massacred for bubonic plague, not a fear. Population decline meant scarcity of labor. There's just not a lot of people to work. The few survivors could charge more, and a lot of them ended up moving to the cities. And without the workers, there is no more manor. And we're going to talk about this when we get to it. Okay, so this is a big one. Loss of family members could be devastating. If when you lose someone, it's awful. Sickness was potentially long and painful while family members watched. Family name cannot be carried on in many cases. So if everyone in the family died, your family name cannot be carried because no one was going to have kids. Serfs were free to leave their lands to seek higher wages or higher money. This is too big. The power of the church was weakened again for multiple reasons. One, the church couldn't help you, and two, there's a lot of death in the priesthood. Persecution of minorities as scapegoats, trying to find someone to blame. Very similar to what happens today with COVID, right? There's a lot of people blaming people from Asia, blaming the government, right? Everybody's blaming each other, and this idea that there has to be someone, right, that did it. Many courts and legislatures were abandoned, so we're not going to focus on that for now. We're not going to focus on this as well. A lot of the art that comes out of this period focuses on the plague and the death and the destruction. Continue looking at the impact of the plague. The widespread epidemic did more than leave millions dead. It also created a ripple. It just didn't kill people. It changed society. Again, no more priest or less priest. The credibility of the church. Why can't you help us? Why can't you save us? You must not be as good as you say you are, right? So that's the church. The economy. Fewer people, fewer customers. Prices drop. But the issue with this is that it's not necessarily accurate because there's also less people working, so there's less food. A lot of people actually died because there was a lot less food, right? Because there's not a lot of labor, there's not a lot of people creating food, so people die of starvation as well. Land is abandoned. Fewer laborers resulted in higher wages. This is the big one. I want you to know that. So, if you were one of the survivors, you could demand more money because there's less people, right? They're gonna have to meet you where you are. So let me read a couple of these texts. As the plague raged on and all efforts to stop its spread or cure those infected failed, people began to lose faith in the institutions they had relied on previously, while the social system of feudalism began to crumble due to the widespread death of the serfs. those who were most susceptible as their living conditions placed them in closer contacts with each other. So remember, serfs are really poor, peasants are really poor, and they live really close by. And the closer you are to someone, the more likely you are to catch a disease like the plague. So a lot of them ended up dying because they lived in such interesting close conditions. It's very similar to what's happening in LA and what's happening in Richmond, in areas where poorer people are living. More of those people are catching COVID because they are more likely to catch COVID because they live in more crowded homes. They have jobs that require them to have more contact with people, right? I saw an article some months ago of this very wealthy guy. He's saying he was going to be quarantining, and he was literally in the ocean with his yacht. I don't know, $20 million yacht, and he wasn't. He's not going to get COVID, right? Because he's by himself. He's very well protected. I mean, we could talk about Donald Trump, but that's a different story. He's, a different story. But the closer you are to people with COVID, the more you have to be in contact with people, the more likely you are to catch COVID. Same thing with the plague, right? People that lived in um, more crowded conditions, people that had to go to work at ports, people that had to be in the cities, they were more likely to be poor, and they were more likely to catch the disease because they were more likely to be in contact with a rat or a flea, right? So I want you to think about that. This disease and the plague, COVID and the plague, have a lot of similarities. There's differences, obviously, but there's similarities in who it impacts mostly. It impacts people that are poor, and it tends to impact minorities as well. Okay, so this is an image of a priest, obviously talking to a person that is probably infected with the plague. This is just a drawing. Um, yeah. So big things to remember from this thing. Church lost power, and I want you to think of why. Think of who was impacted more, and I want you to think of why. And I also want you to think of the benefits of the plague. Okay, you have this video to watch, and then you have something else. You will be writing, I believe you'll be writing a CEE for Monday. And if you want to use this video as evidence, you can. You can also use the other video as evidence as well. I will be primarily focusing on students that scored for feedback. I'll be focusing on students that scored at the bottom of the map test. For reference, a CEE. So the C is, this is too small. The C is the claim, and it answers the question. The claim answers the question with a reason, The evidence is your evidence that you use to support your claim, and it needs to come from the one of the resources that I give you. And the explanation is your elaboration of how the evidence supports the claim, of how evidence supports the claim. You cannot just restate the claim, or you cannot restate the evidence. Okay, it's just going to be a CE, so claim, evidence, explanation, and it'll probably be, I haven't decided yet, it'll probably be on the benefits or the things that came out of the plague. So again, I'm focusing primarily on students that got a map test. If you got a low score on the map test, keep doing what you're doing. You're amazing. I'll see you guys.